Hello and welcome to Capital Insight. I'm State Representative Kevin Mannix from Salem, and I'm your host for this show, which is designed to give all of us a little more insight in what goes on in and around our capital, some of the political figures in our community, and other community leaders who are working to bring about positive change in our community. Today we're going to be discussing a very difficult issue for many folks, and that is young moms who are pregnant, those who have children, those who need assistance in our community. And we'll be talking with two people who've been heavily involved, hands-on with this issue. We have got, first of all, Father Taaffe, and we have also with us Lisa Konen, and I got that right. Welcome to Capital Insight.
Thank you.
One of the things we try to do with this program is give folks a little more insight into the personalities and background of people that are involved in the community so we can better understand the diversity and depth of commitment of the folks in the community. And Father, since you're a little bit older, I'll begin with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your schooling and where you come from?
All right. My home is in Salem, and I graduated from St. Vincent's Grade School and then went to Sacred Heart High School. And then my college was at Mount Angel Seminary College. And after college, I went to Seattle for 4 years and took my theology studies there at St. Edward's Seminary. Ordained 40 years ago, and I've been in 6 parishes during these 40 years.
Now, what is your current parish?
St. Mary's in Shaw.
Now, for folks who may not have figured it out yet, you're a Catholic priest.
I'm a Catholic priest, yes.
And what is your parish like out there in Shaw?
It's in a rural area, about 10 miles from Salem, but most of the people in my parish work in Salem, and a few of them have maybe 5 acres and a couple of cows on it, and so a little bit of farming too. But it's mainly people who work in Salem.
Well, Lisa, you're also somebody from the Salem area. I've got my little cheat sheet here, but why don't you tell us where you went to school and a little bit about your educational background?
Okay, I went to Queen of Peace Grade School, and then we moved out to the Shaw area where Father is from, and graduated in 1984 from Regis High School. Then I had gone down to Oregon State University and graduated in 1990 with my Bachelor's of Science degree in Human Development, which is mainly a focus on a lot of psychology, social sciences, and then prenatal through gerontology. So the whole lifespan and the developmental stages throughout the lifespan.
Now, you're presently the program director for St. Monica's Home for Unwed Young Mothers. Can you tell us a little bit about your job and what brought you into that?
Well, at Oregon State, I had done my internship at St. Bridget's, so that familiarized me with Father Taaffe and,
so I'll say for
and his works.
All right, tell us, what is St. Bridget's?
St. Bridget is another home which was founded by Father 20 years ago, and that's a home for pregnant mothers. And then 3 years ago, he had founded St. Monica Home, so that's the mothers with the babies who have chosen to keep their babies. And so I work at the home where we have the mothers and the babies.
I have an easy way of trying to remember this. I remember that B comes before M, Bridget comes before Monica, and Bridget also goes, I guess, with birth. So if we're talking about moms before birth at St. Bridget's, and then moms after birth, we move along to St. Monica's. Is that,
Sure,
that an easy way of remembering
that's
it?
an easy way to remember, right.
Well, how long have you been working with this program now?
It'll be 2 years in January that I had been with St. Monica's as the program director.
Well, I'm going to shift back to you, Father, and
Okay.
ask you how you came to be involved in this project or these projects.
About 23 years ago, I had a number of girls come to me who were pregnant, and they were looking for a home. At that time, it was an embarrassment to families. Go back to 1972 and 73, and they had no place to go. And their parents came to me and said, could you find a home for them? And there was one in Eugene called Villa Gerard. And I became acquainted with staff there, visited the home very often, and sent girls from Salem down there. And then decided it was probably time that we had a home in the Salem area. So in 1975, we opened St. Bridget Home, and we've been going ever since with hundreds and hundreds of girls.
Now, as you became involved in that issue, we then see the development of St. Monica's. Can you tell us how that did?
Yes, the girls, a number of the girls would keep their babies, and they had no place to go. And I always felt very bad about that. that I kept them during their pregnancy at the home, and they had the baby, and when they left, no place to go. So I knew we had to start another home, and that was what St. Monica was started for, where we take the girl and her baby there. And that's what Lisa does now. She runs that home.
Lisa, can you tell us a bit about how St. Monica's home operates? That is, how do you deal with these young moms, and what do you do to help them?
Basically, we start with an interview process, and we get many referrals through caseworkers, counselors through different schools. Many of our girls are currently at the teen parent program here, and so they do a lot of networking within each other, and a lot of them will refer them to us. So we start with an interview process, and we sit down with them and go over the rules, talk about the house rules, the curfew, their expectations. We certainly tell the girls that they need to come in with some positive goals. We don't say, come in and just sit around, we'll take care of you. They need to be responsible. They're responsible for going to school or work while they're living there. So we just start out with that process by telling them exactly what we expect of them. And if it looks like something that they are comfortable with and they're able to handle, then we will have them move in and set them up with a program with a school or job, whatever works well with them. And they have a lot of other community support. There's Healthy Start and other various support systems that will come into the home and help them along the way. So we're basically there as a nurturing, safe home for them, get them out of a lot of chaotic situations that they're coming from. A lot of these girls, pregnancy and a birth is minor to all the major issues that they are dealing with. So many of them have been neglected and kicked out of the home and brought back and abusive and molested and just several other issues. So we try to really work with them and let them realize that they're a family unit with them and their child now, and how can we give them some positive goals and so that when they leave they have some good things to carry on with them, make some good choices out there when they leave.
Now, as you approach this, it sounds to me like we have all these government programs and community programs that tend to deal with one aspect of someone's problem, whether it be mental health, whether it be providing medical services, perhaps even providing financial aid for food or sustenance or job training. My impression is that those programs deal with pieces of the person and pieces of the issues. Would it be fair to say that what you're doing is you're drawing this all into the individual and trying to pull all of these things together? You're not the only support network, but you're the central core for this person? I would say
so. We're basically the foundation, and then they can certainly, through AFS, they certainly get the financial help.
And that's adult and family services?
Right. And so most of them are on the welfare system, and they help pay rent, help pay for the services there at the home. So that's teaching them the responsibilities, that it's not free out there, that they have to learn that it costs to, live. So that, yes, definitely different aspects. We have, especially when we first have a new mother there are nurses from the Salem Hospital will come and meet with them once a week to see how they're doing. So they have a lot of other networks, but we are pretty much, like you said, the core foundation for them.
Now, is there any duplication of this in the community, Father? You've got St. Bridget's now. Mm-hmm. We haven't talked very much about that yet. But is there some government home for young mothers out there that we haven't heard about?
I'm not aware of any, no.
So it seems to me you're fulfilling a particular need that is not fulfilled by all these other agency programs.
That's right.
And there also seems to be a certain element of TLC, tender loving care, that's involved here that government bureaucracy may not be able to provide.
Yes.
Well, tell me about St. Bridget's operation. Is it parallel St. Monica's, but it's pre-birth, or how does that operate?
St. Bridget is mainly for the teenage unwed mother. It's a residence, but we do insist that they go to school. Sometimes they don't because they're not feeling well and that, but we do insist that they at least make an attempt to get their GED or their graduation diploma. It's not a structured program like St. Monica, and as Lisa's telling you about that, it's not that structured. It's mainly a residence, but they do receive that tender loving care and the other things that they would need. We make sure they get to the doctor and they have nutritious food and a good home.
Is the main point there, when you say it's not a structured program, to provide a support network during the pregnancy?
That's it, yes. I would like to say that, just listening to Lisa talk about this now, the girls who came to us 20 years ago were from middle-class homes, 17, 18, made a mistake, they were pregnant, no big problem except that, and they wanted a different residence. Today, the girl that we would get, completely different. Sometimes the pregnancy is incidental. That this girl has been abandoned and wouldn't be middle class, almost say no class, because she hasn't got a home. Maybe single parent, has been abused physically, sexually, spiritually, mentally, drop out from school. I think probably the average grade for a high school student who comes to us, who would be 17, 18, maybe 8th grade, 9th grade, no stability in her home at all. She's been living with relatives and foster home parents, and then abandons that, and she's out on the street. And then she becomes pregnant. And some way she ends up with us. And that's when we open those big doors of that house and say, come in. And we give them clothing and food, very comfortable home, and a nice clean room for them, and all the help that they need. We furnish counseling for them, and if we can't counsel them, then we get professional counselors to come in and take care of them.
It seems to me then that some of the folks who are working with St. Bridget's, who are focusing on the pre-birth element, would then be concerned, well, what happens after the baby is born? So how do you transition from there?
All right, that's where we send them to Lisa from St. Bridget's home, and she takes care of them there. But we're certainly limited on the number. We are certified by the state to take 5 mothers and 5 babies in St. Monica home. And you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of girls in the situation, so we can't handle them. The dream would be certainly to have more homes like this. And we don't like to have a great big home with 20 or 25 girls in it, because we try and let them see what home life is like. And we can do that if we have just 5, 6 girls at a time in there and give them much more care. And then they can take part in cleaning the home and cooking, preparing the meals. And the house mother who's on duty, or house mothers, have much more time to spend with them. We have 9 house mothers for the 2 homes.
Now, you've got St. Bridget's and you've got St. Monica's, and obviously for those of us who pay any attention to the community, there is a great demand, and you're doing what you can, but your resources are limited. We should mention you're not a government program.
No.
It's a private program supported through private contributions.
Yes, it's not a church program either. It's a
non-denominational.
Non-denominational home, yes.
Could we then ask you, where would a person contact you to make a contribution?
Post Office Box 47, Salem 97308.
That's Post Office Box 47, Salem 97308.
Yes.
And of course, if anybody didn't have a pencil and needed it, they could always call me. I'm in the book.
Yes.
And I can always pass that on.
To run the 2 homes takes about $467 a day. We just bought a home for St. Monica home. Now, we just bought a house for that. And we had to borrow $150,000. And so we're trying to pay that off right now. St. Bridget home, we bought, I think it was 4 years ago. So that's ours now. Both the homes are in Salem, residential districts, very nice homes. St. Bridget home is on a historical list of homes in Salem. It's on D Street, 5th and D Street. And St. Monica home is in South Salem on Pioneer Drive in Madrona.
What kind of reaction do you get to the neighbors to these homes? Have you had any adverse reaction?
When we moved to South Salem just a few months ago for our new home, the neighbors had some questions to ask. I think they thought that maybe a group home was coming in with delinquent children, something like that. So they had some real concerns. But we did finally prove to them that no, we would run a very, very nice home, and they wouldn't even know we're in the neighborhood. And they see that now, and they've been very friendly to us and helpful.
I'm going to pause for a minute and mention to our audience that you're with us on Capital Insight. I'm your host, State Representative Kevin Mannix from Salem. And if at any time you have any questions or concerns or comments, feel free to contact me at Capital Insight, H395, State Capitol, Salem, Oregon, 97310. And in addition, if you want any additional information about St. Bridget's or St. Monica's, if you want to make a contribution, the P.O. Box is P.O. Box 47, Salem, Oregon, 97308. And Father, I assume the contributions are tax deductible?
They are, yes, for a nonprofit organization.
Now, Lisa, as you've been dealing with the issues in terms of the community, Father mentioned at first maybe the neighbors were a little nervous because you had a new place in South Salem. How do you fit into the community now as a home, St. Monica's home?
I think we fit in really well. And like Father said, with the neighbors, we've got neighbors that have come and brought vegetables. We have such a big donation pool out there. People are always just, the whole community is so grateful. We always accept, donations for clothes, adult clothes and baby clothes. I mean, anything like that is certainly welcome. Because again, a lot of these girls come, and some of them come with just the clothes on their back, and so it's nice for us to be able to support them in that way to help set them up with, clothes, and a lot of times when they do leave, and get into their own apartments, they are always needing furniture too. So a lot of times people will donate, furniture that we can then give them to help set them up.
Do you interconnect with then the Jobs program and the Jobs Plus program, those two welfare-related programs that help move folks who are receiving welfare benefits into the workforce through education and job training?
Yes, they do. They have that set up with the Teen Parent program and through AFS, so the girls are doing that as well.
Do you ever see the eventual result of your efforts? That is, do you have folks come back and visit with you and tell you how they're doing?
Mm-hmm. We certainly do. I know that there's a gal that keeps in contact with Father that went to St. Bridget, and a gal that I've worked with at St. Monica. We got this last Christmas, we got a really nice letter from her saying that she was getting a 4-point at Chemeketa and doing really, really well. So on occasion we do, they come back and we hear from them, which is really nice.
Is the focus of your effort lighting a candle in your own corner instead of cursing the darkness? That is, work with that which is immediately available to you, gathering resources, doing what you can in this time and space, rather than making some grandiose statements. We always hear about government wanting to solve everybody's problem. Maybe you'd want to comment on this, Father.
No, it's just right here and now that we're working on this. And Kevin, I just to show you what's the great need, and I hope answer your question too. This would be typical. I recall one time a girl came to the door at St. Monica Home, and she had a baby with her, and it was in the winter. And she asked to be interviewed, and so we did interview her. And she wanted to know when she could come. We usually wait for a day, and the staff talks it over. And she said, "When will I know?" And we said, "Tomorrow, we'll let you know. You give us your phone number, we'll call you." She said, "I don't have a phone to call. Where can we get in touch with you?" She said, "Well, you really can't. What time could I come back? Could I come in the morning?" So we said, "Well, why don't you come around noon?" So it was a very, very cold winter night. And it was raining at this time. The doorbell rang at noon, and there she was, holding that baby, and she had a towel around the baby, completely just dripping. Her hair was all wet and dripping. She was cold and wet, and she came in. I said, "Where have you been?" And she said, "I slept under the Center Street Bridge last night. I don't have a home at all. And I've been doing this during this winter." Now, if we had known that, we would have taken her in that night. But this isn't just an odd case. These girls that come to us often don't have anything. I remember telling one girl, "Yes, sure, I accept it. Now go get your things, your clothes, and bring them." "I don't have anything," she says. "I don't own anything."
And the winter months are the worst.
Mm-hmm.
We get so many more calls, and we have a long waiting list, and it's just incredible when it starts getting cold out there. October through February, we get so many more calls.
So when we hear all the discussion about the need for shelters and homes for the homeless, sometimes we overlook that in the here and now and in the immediate sense, there are some folks who are trying to provide such homes for the homeless, for one category of homeless, those in need. And I wonder how many of those folks out there who pontificate about, well, let's just take care of things in our own community, let's do it in the private sector. I would hope they would come forward and provide financial support, especially since it's tax deductible. Maybe I'm preaching a little bit too much here. But as a politician, as a representative, I often see that government is asked to step in, and yet government doesn't have that personal contact. I mean, we can talk money, we can talk programs, but it's very hard to have that hands-on unless you have people from the private sector who are willing to lend that hand. Well, tell me something about those people, some of your house mothers. What kind of folks do this thing?
Oh, gosh, we have...
Here's a typical one right there.
Well, actually, I'm the youngest house mother there. Our house mothers range with so many different backgrounds and stages of life. We have a gal who we kind of call Grandma because she's in her late 60s, and so she can bring a lot of her life experiences and be a good role model for the girls. And then all the way down to, you know, me with, I think, with my college experience. I get a lot of questions from the girls about college and you know, what they aspire to do and how to go about it. And so I think just because of all the different house mothers have different backgrounds and experiences, they get that chance to learn that from each of us. And I think that's pretty apparent at St. Bridget too, the same type.
Would you see some opportunity for growth of this program? That is, if you had folks come forward and say, I have a home to lend you or to even give to you, or I have cash contributions or whatever, would you be willing to expand the program within the reach of still the human touch and monitoring it and everything?
Oh yes, there's such a need, Kevin, for this, such a need. We could have hundreds of these homes throughout the state, actually hundreds. And again, and today it isn't just because she's pregnant or because she has a baby. That young girl needs a lot of help.
If we think about this in context, it costs $100,000 a year to maintain a juvenile in our most intensive juvenile incarceration system, McLaren. Now that cost, it's not just room and board, you're talking about very intensive counseling, you're talking about all of the support programs and the education programs and even psychological and medical services, but and also security, because you're dealing with some very, very violent offenders. But when you take a look at that, and these are folks who are out there in effect harming society, but we're trying to pull them back, that tremendous expenditure, what could you do with $100,000 for your program in trying to reach soon-to-be moms or moms who've got babies? I mean, but I'm trying to bring this into some human context in terms of what government does.
We could certainly use it and start more homes just like this. When a girl comes to St. Monica Home, she signs a contract that she is going to go to school, further education, whether it is high school or college or job training. And she learns how to bank, how to shop, how to be a good parent, how to take care of that house, and how to take care of her baby. Maybe reversing everything that she has been taken care of. Maybe she's been abused. We're teaching her, you don't abuse children. Yes, we could use $100,000 right now. And I had a plan 20 years ago when I started the first home that we would be all over the state with these homes. But it's very difficult financially to keep the homes going. Very difficult.
I'm just thinking out loud here, but from a political perspective, I'm obviously heavily into the immediate here and now on the anti-crime efforts, but I've also spoken very strongly in favor of early intervention to head off crime. I do believe that you've got long-term solutions as well as short-term solutions. It seems to me that what you're talking about here is one of the best forms of long-term solutions. If you're giving these young moms a helping hand, it not only helps them, but it helps their baby. The Healthy Start program, which you mentioned, of course, is a government program to make sure there's appropriate health care to get the child going and to deal with any difficulties, medical or physical difficulties the child may have, because there are a lot of complications, I assume, in some of these childbirths because of the poor history. Is that fair to say?
Yes. I remember Bill Carey, who was the head of the Children's Services, when he knew we were starting St. Monica, and we said, if you don't do anything else, teach those children not to abuse their children. He says, I'm sure that every child you get there, young mother, is one who's been abused herself. He said, stop that circle of abuse. If you don't do anything else, do that.
And I think these girls naturally want to do that. I mean, I commend them just for making that call to us. They don't have, they can choose, you know, different lifestyles or just live in the comfort zone that they're used to, the, you know, the gangs and the crime and you know, all that type of living situation that they're so used to. But I really commend them for making that call, wanting to make a positive change, and realizing this is great, and this is how you're going to go about it, and this is how we can help you through that.
It's part of the mindset that develops at that time, and it's an emotional as well as intellectual thing that, gee, I'm pregnant, I now have another life to consider, not just my own, and then once the child is born, I have a baby, and I have a baby's life to consider. Is that part of the dynamic here in terms of reevaluating their circumstances?
I think so. They're realizing, gosh, you know, I'm a mom now, what am I going to do? You know, they really feel lost in society because they aren't, you know, the mother figure that you think of, you know, wife, mother, and they're not really the teenage anymore. You know, they aren't fitting into that group anymore. So they're really feeling lost, and they really need a lot of resources and help in dealing with what their role is and how they're going to go about being a productive mother and child care provider.
So if we were trying to talk about networking to reach out to folks, besides the fact that we don't have enough resources right now in this program to take in all whom we ought to take in, have you thought about the domestic violence shelter network too, and whether or not there's increasing political support for trying to address that issue? It would seem to me that the shelters ought to be automatically interfacing with your program because so many victims of domestic violence will also turn out to be either pregnant or already with having a child. What's your reaction to that?
We've had some of that. We do have some networking with SOS here in town. That's Salem Offering Shelter. And a lot of times, like with the YMCA, a lot of times they have, through their shelter programs, they will call us and say, look, we have a teenage mother here. Can we get the child and the mother on your waiting list? And so we do a little bit of networking there. And I know that they've come out for tours, and which is always welcome. Anybody can come by and come tour the homes if they're interested. So there's a little bit of that networking within the shelters too.
For the short term then, in terms of the community, you would always welcome, I assume, people volunteering to help.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Financial support,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, physical support in terms of there's some clothing or furniture that can be made available. And again, the best way to reach you is to write to this P.O. Box 47 in Salem, and the zip code is 97308. Is there a phone number people can call to?
Yeah, it's in the phone book under St. Bridget and St. Monica.
All right, so the Salem directory, St. Bridget's, St.
You want us to
Monica.
give those
Pardon?
numbers? You want those numbers?
Yes, please.
St. Bridget, 585-7213. 585-7213. St. Monica, 371-1019.
And in effect, during regular daytime hours, you would welcome calls from folks who can help out in some way.
Oh, yes, yes. We do need help. We would not be in existence today if people hadn't come from the very beginning and helped us.
Isn't this the first year ever that you've received any help from the government?
Yes, we have now a contract with the government, the state of Oregon, and they are helping us. They've contracted with us. And Lisa, you can tell about that. What's going on with that right now, a program you've got going?
We have some funding to help increase the training within the house mothers. Many of them come and they haven't had real intense training. So right now we have funds for training. So we'll go to various conferences or bring in therapists to have training on how to better work with these young mothers. Because, you know, in years ago past, they said it's going to get worse with all these other issues. So we're going to be working with the training to learn how to deal even better with these young mothers.
Well, we'll have to build on that. And with that positive word about at least the government providing some assistance, I'd encourage citizens to provide assistance too. And I thank you all for joining us on Capital Insight with our guests, the representatives of St. Bridget's and St. Monica's, Father Taaffe and Lisa Konen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you
you.
very much.